Hi there, Dr. Uni-ball here to talk about the difference between dye-based and pigmented inks. Now there's a big difference. First of all, most pens are dye-based. What that means is that manufacturers take liquid ink and they use that to stain the carrier or the fluid inside the pen. And when you write with a dye-based ink, in essence what you're doing is staining the surface of the paper. Now this is a representation of the surface of a piece of paper magnified 3,500 times. And if you were to take this dye-based pen and write across the surface, you would see that what you're doing is staining the surface fibers. Now pigmented inks are very different, like this Uni-ball 207 gel. Pigment is dried flecks of paint, like I have in this jar here, that float around in the gel. If I were to write on this piece of paper with my 207, you'd see that it's not staining the surface of the paper. In fact, what it's doing is it's permanently embedding these dried flecks of pigment into the surface of the paper. It's permanent, and the only way to get those pigment flecks out is to physically rip them out, thus destroying the paper itself. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important for two reasons. First of all, much more light reflects back off of pigmented ink than it does off dye-based ink. In fact, if you look at a jar of pigmented ink versus dye-based ink, you can see that the pigmented ink is much more vibrant, much brighter than the dye-based ink. And you're going to see that on paper as well. The second reason it's important is because of check washing. Now, check washing is a type of identity theft, whereby a crook gets into your mailbox at night, pulls out the check that you've written perhaps to your utility company, and they use common household chemicals to remove certain bits of information from that check and rewrite the check to themselves. So what is this check washing and how easy is it to perform? Well, that's the scary part. Let me show you. Okay, I'm going to zoom the camera in just as close as it can get so you can clearly see what's going on. Here's my check, which I've filled out using a dye-based pen, and again, the vast majority of pens are dye-based. And I'm going to go ahead and submerge it in the bath of acetone, and you'll be able to very quickly see the ink from the dye-based pen being eaten away. Now it's been in there for about 20 seconds and at least half the ink is gone. Okay, it's been less than 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and take it out early to show you that what I have now is a washed check that I can then fill in with my own information. Now we're going to run the same experiment. This time I'm going to fill out the majority of the check using my dye-based pen. Make it out to my utility company. And this time I'm going to sign it using my 207 pigmented gel ink. And this is the one that's going to eliminate check washing. Just like before, I'm going to go ahead and stick the check in, and you'll see the dye-based ink almost immediately coming off. What you'll also see, though, is that the pigmented ink isn't being touched. There's no chemical reaction going on with those dried flecks of paint that are permanently embedded into the check fibers. Okay, it's been less than 5 minutes, and I have a check that, for all intents and purposes, is a blank Let's sign check. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. Let it dry. It's going to dry very quickly. That's one of the properties of acetone. It dries incredibly quickly. And because it dries so quickly, it doesn't damage the paper in any way. And you can see that where I wrote with a dye-based pen, the acetone has eaten that dye away. But where I wrote with the 207 gel pigmented pen, those pigments are still firmly embedded into the paper fibers of the check.